Recently, Bookmark stopped by the Catholic Marketing Network and got a chance to catch up with various authors in attendance. We hope you enjoy this interview. And here we are, continuing our conversations at the Catholic Marketing Network in Birmingham, Alabama. Stopping by is author Fred Vilbig. His book, Leave No Soul Behind, A Catholic Handbook. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Doug.
So,
Thank you.
So are you a professional writer, been doing these for years, or what's the story?
No, God's a very annoying person. Have you ever noticed that about him? I was asked to give a talk. I put these thoughts together. I'm driving by a Baptist church, and all of a sudden, this idea pops into my mind about write a book. And I'm thinking, no, that's the most ridiculous idea that I've ever had. And it wouldn't go away. And so I ended up writing the book. I didn't like it. God brought an editor into my life who happened to have written, she'd been an editor for Random House. And I asked her, I said, did you ever edit anything I would have seen? And she said, yes, there was that book that won the Pulitzer Prize. And I said, would you mind?
Hold that against her, though.
No. But, but what I did was I said, well, would you mind reading this? And she was waiting for a medical procedure, and she said, no, that'd be fine. So within a week, she got back and she said, we have to get this published. So
really?
But I had this was never on my radar.
Okay. So let me ask you, you define it as a Catholic handbook. I mean, I know the Scouts used to have a handbook. What makes this a handbook?
Well, I talk about, so let me talk a little bit about the book. So I have 11 children, 10 of whom have fallen away from the faith. I'm trained as a lawyer. My degree is in neo-Thomistic philosophy. I can argue with the best of them, but with the response that I get from my kids are eye rolls. You probably get that. So I thought, well, what do I do? Well, you need to engage God, and the way you engage God is through prayer. And so many Catholics have not been catechized well, especially my generation. And so what I wanted to do in the book was to explain, well, what is prayer? Why is the Our Father important? What is the Hail Mary about? What are some of these other prayers that are out there? The second part is holiness, living your faith. And the fact that people look at the 10 Commandments as, oh, God says I can't do these things. It's a negative kind of a thing. But actually, you can recast them all as being words of love, that God wants us to love selflessly, which is the way Jesus loved us in dying on the cross. And so I talk about that, and I talk about the spiritual and corporal works of mercy, and I tie in the saints with all of them. And then the last part of the book is about sacrifice. That Jesus said, come follow me. He went to the cross, and it wasn't an option. When Peter tried to protest, right after calling him, you were blessed because, the Father's revealed this to you. Then he says, get behind me, Satan. It was emphatic that we follow him and go to the cross. And we unite our sufferings through the Mass, which is Jesus on the cross. So I'll leave it at that.
Let me ask you with this, obviously we've been doing the show for a number of years. There's probably more books being published now than there ever has been, actually, even Catholic books especially, in a lot of ways. And various topics like these and others. What makes you, in your mind, what perspective are you bringing to this that you think makes this book a little bit different?
Well, okay, so you interviewed Father, I think it was Walsh, he's a Norbertine priest, and he mentioned that when he does monthly meetings with his parishioners, one of the biggest questions is, people say, our children have fallen away from the faith, what do we do? I try to address that question from the perspective of a father of 11, and from the perspective of a lay person, because the battle is being fought in the trenches, and that it is a spiritual battle that we're fighting. And so I think that perspective is a little bit different, and I hope it brings value.
So I think you mentioned 11 children, 10 fallen away. Did I get that number right? The one who hasn't, where were they in the Quran?
Number one.
Number one.
She's number one.
Okay, she's number one.
And she has her 7th on the way.
Okay.
So God bless her.
Well, what was it about, do you think, her upbringing that was different than the others who followed?
We don't know.
Okay.
That's the thing, because they all we sent them all to Catholic school. We sent them, I would bribe them with breakfast to go to Mass with me in the morning. And we would do, we prayed. I would read to them. We did all the same things. We don't know. My wife and I have talked about this many times. We just don't know. And society is such a...
What does she think? Did you ever ask her?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Social media.
Right, that's what I was
She says she was kind of pre-social media, and all the other kids were kind of as it was growing and developing.
Right.
And I was the president of the Catholic Lawyers Association in St. Louis, and we had a priest come in and talk to us from North St. Louis, which has a lot of problems. And somebody asked him, said, what do you think of social media? And without batting an eye, he said, work of the devil.
Right.
And it has caused more problems. People are so depressed and anxious,
absolutely. Right.
and we think it has a lot to do with social media and all of the garbage that's on it.
Right.
So,
Right. Well, again, it's people being told a lie. I mean, he's the father of lies.
it's a fantasy. Yes.
Right.
It's a fantasy that Satan projects
Right.
to try to draw people away from, and he says, you'll be happy if you do this. But if you look at society, all those people are miserable.
Right. Well, because once he lures you in and you fall for it, then he turns on you.
Right. Well, also, there's a hole in our hearts, and we try to fill that hole with all kinds of things in this life. But the problem is, Father Gergu Lagrange wrote about this. He wrote about how that that hole is immense. That there's almost like a universe in our hearts.
Yeah.
And the only thing that will fill
Augustine,
that is
right.
God. Yes, Augustine talks about that.
Right.
That
Hearts are restless, right?
Yeah, our hearts are restless who rest in thee.
Right.
But the idea is that the only thing that will fill that hole in our hearts is God.
Did you ever wonder, I mean, maybe it's a situation, I don't mean to get, but I think it relates to the book, and I'm just interested as an indication for your family. Do none of the other children look at your oldest daughter and say, gee, life is pretty good for her. It seems like it's working out really well. What's different about
Just
her
the
situation?
opposite.
Really?
Just the opposite. They've kind of ostracized her because she's living this life that is totally different.
Right.
And
She's so last century.
she's so pre-social media.
Yeah, okay, right, yeah.
So and I think that is sort of the turning point. And there's so many people who are caught up in what do people think about me, and the whole thing with some of these things that come out on TikTok where you have to do this or that, and people die as a result of some of these silly things that they do. It's crazy. It is just crazy.
Well, yeah, sometimes I think it's a function of people who have too much time on their hands, which is not a good situation with social media because people get sucked into that. And they need a little more something to spend their time on. A lot of us grew up, having jobs when we were 14 or 15 or 16 years old, whether it was mowing lawns or whatever it was. In the world we live in today, a lot of people haven't had that experience.
Our society, we seem to want to promote products and things that give people leisure. And I think it was Joseph Piper that talked about how, what was the name of his book? It was about leisure and culture and society.
I remember the name. I remember the book. I don't remember.
Right. Anyway, the idea was that if we had more leisure, we would develop more culture. Well, it's just the opposite. We are so, we live in such a narcissistic society that we turn in on ourselves when we have time.
Right.
And it's sad. It results in very unhappy people.
And to dovetail on what you're saying, and this is obviously the whole social media, the whole idea of the selfie says it right there. That's all narcissism.
Oh,
this idea that people are taking pictures of themselves that nobody will look at but besides them, whether they realize it or not.
And some of those pictures that people take, they're taking them by cliffs and then they fall off the cliffs.
Right.
They do crazy things in order to promote themselves.
Because they get hung up on themselves.
Right.
They lose focus on reality because they're so focused on themselves. And the point is, as we all learn through life, there's always some who are greater and some who are lesser. And the more you try to measure yourself against other people, the more depressed you're going to get. Because you're not perfect.
We are not sufficient for our own happiness. If we were, solitary confinement wouldn't be cruel and unusual punishment.
Right.
And the way to happiness is the cross, Jesus emptying himself completely out of love of God, out of love of us, and that's what we're called to, is a selfless love.
Is this your first book you actually wrote?
Well, I wrote another book that's a law-based book.
Okay.
It was a collection of columns that I did, but basically this was the first book of this type.
And how do you usually write when you're writing? In the morning, time of day, on a computer, longhand, what do you?
I'm one of those that writes out longhand, and after Mass
Very
in the morning.
loyally of you, right?
I know. People make fun of me for that, like you're doing.
Get out the legal pad, right?
So when after Mass, I go into the church. We have a Blessed Sacrament chapel, but I go into the church, and I usually pray and write in there, and so that's basically where I write.
Okay, and you said you might be working on another book?
Yes, the next book is The Pursuit of True Happiness, true in parentheses, And the idea is it's a reflection on the four last things, focusing on St. Alphonsus Liguori and his preaching that he did in the 1700s at a time that I think is very similar, analogous to our time, where people want to talk about logic and reason, and he brought people back to the faith through reflecting on these things. But I look at, Saint John Bosco and his reflections on hell, his dream that he had about hell. Talk about. I always bring the saints in because they should be our heroes.
Get those two pillars.
Yes.
The Eucharist and Our Lady. Okay,
yes.
Very good. Fred Vilbig, Leave No Soul Behind, a Catholic Handbook. Well, good luck. I hope you sell some at the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for stopping
by. And thank you
by.
for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
To get a copy of the materials mentioned on this episode of EWTN Bookmark, log on to our web store, EWTNRC.com, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or call 1-800-854-6316.